few nights ago, myself and Geo did a cup of tea. There was some dregs left in the bottom, some tea leaves left in the pot, some crumbs at the bottom of the biscuit barrel. And we didn't want to leave any unfinished tea and biscuits now, did we, Geo? So there's a couple of questions left, and Geo's got them, and we're going to deal with them right now.
Yeah, the first one is from Simon Hughes, who says, everyone at the Sevilla home game thought the atmosphere was the best since the move, but do you think the stadium will ever be great for football?
Well, it was great for football on that night. I think there's a couple of things here on this one, really. There's a lot of clubs on the continent that play in just such an environment. And it's not for me to speak for fans, but they seem not to care, or they seem accustomed to it. Let's put it that way, at least. That being said, maybe those same fans have never really spent their time really close to the pitch. I've been very aware of non-league football recently. My son's been playing quite a lot, and Dave obviously plays at junior level. But the main team, they've got a little close stadium, and Aldershot is not far away. That's very similar as well. There's a lot of clubs. I just think everyone watching this, certainly in the UK, will have been to a small ground before, be it League One, League Two, and the Scottish non-league Scottish grounds, non-league English grounds. We're sort of used to it, so I think it's harder for us to grow accustomed to being that far from the pitch. I do think it was a really good football night. Will it ever be a football ground? Not in my eyes. They need to do more with it. They've squared. I'm pleased they've squared off the bits behind the goal. And actually, when you stood there, as I'm sure you saw the views from when we were at the Sevilla game, that's a really good view, but it's a long way away. And whilst it's good this end of the pitch, actually what was going up the far end, I couldn't see. Now there will be people that would suggest there are other reasons aside from the proximity to the pitch why I couldn't see what was going up the other end. But I'd still like to square off those two main stands and bring them closer to the pitch.
It's a difficult one because I've not done loads of home games this season, so I feel like a bit of a fraud comment on it without having attended enough. But prior to this season, we've gone to 65% of home games since we've moved in. Well, yeah, of course we could, but for now, Sevilla was a bit of a one-off, though. It was magical, but it was magical because of the occasion, and we needed the occasion in order for the atmosphere to follow it. But I know people that live in London, go to every home game and stuff, and they messaged me not that long ago before the Sevilla game. I can't remember what game it was. It was almost like, I'm dreading this game. The atmosphere has been crap for the last 5 games and stuff, and I don't think the atmosphere helps at all. I'm aware the question is in relation to will it ever be a football stadium or feel like a football stadium, but the atmosphere is what contributes hugely to that. And I think when the atmosphere is a bit quiet and we're getting beat or the weather's not great and it's just a bit of a drab affair going to the game, I think that's when you start to notice the bad parts about the stadium. On Sevilla, I'm not going to lie, I walked over a massive bridge to get to see it. Didn't even notice it. Didn't even notice the fact that I had to take 10 strides to go from the concourse to reach the first seat of the stand. I didn't notice it. However, if I was walking back from half-time, 1-0 down to Burnley, I can assure you I'm probably counting my strides, going 10 bloody paces that was before I got to my seat in the stand. I'm not too sure. I think, well, I'll say ever, yes, but I think the amount of money it would take and stuff, I'm just not sure it's ever feasible, and I don't think the club would see a return on the money. And I think that's the downfall, really. I think it needs too much work. They've made some changes, and I think they are doing their best now to try and make it more West Ham-like and more football stadium-like. But there's almost like a ceiling it can go to, and in order to get to from here to here, you've almost got to like knock it down and start again to some extent. Yeah. But what it can do is it can feel, in my opinion, it can feel like West Ham's home without it feeling like a football stadium, if that makes sense. I think there's two different things there, West Ham's home and a football stadium. I think it's two slightly different things. But someone on Twitter, just quickly to grab the person's name, MBK said, should the club invest? They've got a big budget this summer. He said, hypothetically, should the club maybe invest some of the transfer kitty into the stadium to make it feel more like a home?
I think incrementally, I just don't think it's worth it. I think for the price of a new left back, for instance, say left back's 15 million. What do you get if you chuck 15 million at that stadium? I would suggest next to nothing. So having this chat, actually funny up my son the other day, and he was asking about it. And I said, there's only one way that will really happen. That is by enough knocking it down. But still to do it, whatever happens, it's going to cost about £1 billion. So you've got to, people are going to want to return on that. Now there's no way that we redo the stadium and then the club's worth 1.6 billion. Let's say it's worth 600 million at the moment. It's just not going to happen. You're not getting that money back. There's only one way that's ever going to happen, and that is if the rate of building work in and around the area continues at what it has done over the last sort of 10 years, and actually it becomes really sought after there, and there's no more room left to expand, and people look at the footprint of that stadium. I drove past Twickenham the other day. Twickenham's a magnificent stadium, absolutely massive. That stadium's bigger. That stadium, the footprint is actually slightly bigger than Wembley because it was built to house 90,000 people around a running track rather than Wembley, which is for 90,000 people around a football pitch. The footprint is huge. So the only thing I think is if they knocked it down and the warm-up track, and actually they took probably half of the footprint, whoever bought the land, and then built whatever buildings, offices, whatever the case was on there, and then we almost got half of that built, a purpose-built 60,000 stadium. Then you sold off the property, you might find it was worth it then. Aside from that, I just can't see it happening.
Yeah, I would say no to spending money as well. We're almost West Ham are too good now. I think we were bobbing around in mid-table, 12, 13, 14 for 3 or 4 consecutive seasons spent on the playing squad at the minute. Like you said, a new left back, and you said to keep us in the European football. With European football brings nights like Sevilla that we just had, and actually to improve the stadium in a weird way, you're better off to improve the playing squad than the stadium almost improves through what we're watching, the results, the atmospheres, the magical nights, the memories and stuff, and that will improve people's perspective of the stadium. You know, like that Sevilla game was by far my best game I've been to at the London Stadium by a country mile. It's not because the stands were squared off. It's not because we had a claret carpet around the pitch or anything.
Because I kissed you. It's because I kissed you.
It wasn't because you smooched me. It was because we were playing in the Europa League against a top team, and we won and qualified for the quarterfinal. That's got nothing to do with the seats or anything like that. It was what I saw on the pitch that made it magical. Off the pitch, in the stands, if you like. Right. Izzy Anderson is Anderson says, "Are we signing a striker in summer?"
We are, Izzy. We are. I do believe we are. Have I got evidence to suggest we are? No. So I'm relying on pure old common sense and sort of self-motivation and self-interest here. I cannot believe for a second that David Moyes thinks that it's possible to go through a second season without a striker. I do firmly believe that David Moyes thought he could go through this season without a striker, but I'm absolutely adamant he thought he was bringing someone in January. Now, it doesn't, funny enough, we've already discussed a couple of days ago about Rafinha, and hopefully you've watched Geo's video with Fabrizio Romano, so we know he's been for a striker as well. I'm also adamant we were looking to bring in, we were convinced we were bringing in Lingard. So I don't even think that Moyes thinks that he can go for a season without a striker. I think he's found himself in a position this season, damn it, I should have more players in this. I think he knows next season he needs to go for it. And when I talk about self-interest, David Moyes is a competitive man. All these sports people are. He's going to want to finish the job that he started. I'm pretty sure he would have thought that the Manchester United job was the opportunity in his career to put some medals in a trophy cabinet or medal drawer or whatever it might be, right? Wherever you put your medals, right? That was his opportunity to get some. That's been denied him. Now, I think he's a competitive man. I think he thinks he's a successful man. He needs a trophy or two. I think he knows that. And I just think he's realistic enough to know, bearing in mind what he's gone through at Real Sociedad, at Sunderland, sacked once or whatever, released once at West Ham. This is actually his best chance of winning trophies and finish his career with a couple of medals, is to do something at West Ham. and build us up. And I think to build us up, you've got to get us a striker. So I actually think, yes, we are going to bring somebody in the summer.
I'm nervous. I am nervous because, like I mentioned in a cup of tea to you, Moyes' his own mission is we've looked for 2 years, can't find a striker. I'm not convinced we then add 6 months to that and suddenly we find the perfect striker. Will we sign someone to play striker? Yes, I believe we will. Will we sign a striker to play striker? I'm not convinced on that. I think we will acquire somebody who can play up front, or we will acquire somebody which pushes Jared Bowen up front when we need him as there. So I think we'll see someone different playing up front for West Ham next season when required. Will it be a big ticket, £50 million man? I'm not convinced. I'm nervous about it actually, because you're adamant that Moyes wouldn't go another season. Well, I was adamant in January that Moyes would not sign anyone in January. He didn't. So I'm no longer you said you're using common sense as to why we're signing a striker. Well, I was hoping to apply common sense in January to sign a player, and we didn't. And I almost have taken common sense out of the equation when it comes to West Ham transfers now. There is none. We don't have any. So I'm going to say no, I'm not confident. I'm hopeful. I'm not confident we will sign a striker in particular. Now, the final question is from Nick James, and that is about David Moyes. He says, would you like to see Moyes add to his coaching staff? Because obviously Alex Ferguson at Man United would often change up his staff, often change his assistant manager, and Nick feels that's part of the reason Sir Alex was successful. And just before you answer, I second what Nick James is saying. I too believe that was a large reason as to why Alex Ferguson was successful over a number of years at Man U.
I hadn't thought of it that way. I didn't know that question was going to be presented like that, to be honest with you. Yes, absolutely right. Yes, he did. Carlos Queiroz, McLaren. He brought Walter Smith in for a time, didn't he? There's others who I'll have forgotten now. He did. I think that's a really, really good shout. David Moyes is very good at recruiting people. His first choice at West Ham, believe it or not, was Steve Round, who was with him at Everton, but actually in the end, Arteta nicked him and took him to Arsenal. Now that tells you, and apparently England have wanted to get him as well. So that tells you a couple of things. That tells you that that obviously Steve Round's a very good coach. He's very sought after, but it also tells you that David Moyes knows his stuff in terms of recruiting coaches. We hear that Irvine is a really, really good. There's an anecdote, I can't even remember it now, but apparently Irvine is very good as well. I think we all know how good Nolan is as well. And we've heard from all and sundry how good Paul Nevin is with the set pieces. The fact that he was, when England were actually brilliant at set pieces, under Gareth Southgate at the Russia World Cup, it was Nevin doing them. Then he came to West Ham. And then actually England got worse at it. And actually Southgate came back to Nevin and said, I know you're at West Ham. Would you mind coming and doing some more set pieces with England on a part-time basis? Again, all that shows is that David Moyes knows his coaches and can select a good coach. That'd be one of the we often talk about what he's not so good at. That's one of the things he clearly is very good at. Should he bring in another one? I think that's a really, really good shout. I'm pretty sure if he did, then it'd be a good one. Do you remember he was thinking about bringing Joe Cole in? Do you remember that? And when I heard about it, I thought it sounded like one of those things to sort of just appease the fans. Do you know what I mean? That's what I thought.
Teddy Sheringham.
Yeah, he's just doing it because he's played for West Ham and he's popular and all the rest of it. I know I'd not really heard Joe Cole analyse a game at that point, but now he does the stuff for BT. I've realised he's got quite a sharp mind, doesn't he? He's actually very good. He's a funny guy, clearly very, very likeable, and quite insightful in terms of the game. So, all right, it didn't quite happen, but clearly, again, Moyes had looked in and thought, "Oh, God, this guy's obviously done his badges, and he's quite perceptive in terms of the game. So, why not bring it on?"
Yeah, I think it's important. Obviously, we lost Irvine and we've got McKinley in now, but I think Nolan's probably quite crucial. Because of the modern game, we've also got Stuart Pearce as well, who had previous managerial stints, as did Nolan before Moyes took him under his wing. So he's got coaches there with managerial experience, actually managing. Irvine, of course, was as well. And when I spoke to Neil Mellor said Alan Irvine's the best person I've ever worked under, and he worked under like Sir Gerard Houllier at Liverpool. And no, Irvine's the one that taught me the most in my career. But funnily enough, at time of recording earlier today, I watched an interview, it's 6-7 minutes long, when Tubes meets David Moyes, and they did it the day after the Sevilla victory, because they made a joke about how the cameraman's a West Ham fan and he's still drunk, and Moyes actually comes across as quite funny in these little interviews and stuff. It's almost like off the cuff thing, because he says, "Oh yeah, I seen him staggering there, watch the beer bottles," and it was quite funny. But Tubes basically says to him, "How has management changed? Obviously, you've been in the managerial game a long time," and Moyes is saying, it's almost completely different now. Back in the day, it was hairdryer treatment, and you not quite brutalized them, but certainly in pre-season intensity was there and stuff. He says now can't really do that. Can't really do the hairdryer treatment. You've got to put your arm around them and stuff. And as a manager, I think it's difficult to change not just as a manager, just in life. It's difficult to change your behavior, your habits. So if you can't do it, that's okay. But make sure you get someone in that is up to date with the latest policies or the new way of coaching and stuff. And I always think that's why Ferguson evolved quite well, not necessarily with the methods and stuff, the tactics, when Ferguson's replaced tactics and maybe get found out a little bit or whatever, he'd get someone else in that had a new way of playing. He was always one step ahead. Fergie was almost a trendsetter with the new formations, a new way of playing your inverted wingers or whatever it is you want to do. Fergie was always one step ahead until someone arrived at Highbury from Japan with a similar idea and concept as well. But Fergie stayed ahead because it wasn't necessarily him, it was who he trusted that made Fergie good. And I think David Moyes does do that and needs to continue doing that as well. And that is trusting the right people. And you never know, Mark Noble might be the next one. We'll have to wait and see what the role is for Mark Noble. But if it is part of the coaching team, it could be another one that's in David Moyes' team.
There you go. Well, thank you very much all for your questions. I'm sure there were more and more besides. We'll be back. We're back tomorrow talking about something else, no doubt. We're back into it. We're back. The thick of the action is about to be upon us now. So loads and loads of content on here and, of course, on Patreon. This is the best time to sign up to Patreon right now. Start of the month. The link is in the description below. Loads of additional content, discount in our shop, and we've got some lovely, lovely things in our shop, of course. And most importantly of all, it's the best way you can help support Hammers Chat. Right, we'll catch up with you tomorrow.